You're listening to Up to the Mic. If you want to learn about the struggles and triumphs of starting a business, performing for sold-out arenas, or inspiring those you lead, Up to the Mic is the show for you. Throw on some headphones and get ready to listen as our host, Vinny Hale, sits down to showcase the stories of those who deserve their stories be told. From young entrepreneurs to critically acclaimed musicians and so much more, Vinny helps compile a season of interviews that inspire listeners to follow in the footsteps of his guest. Welcome back to another episode of Up to the Mic. If you are loving the show, please do us a favor by subscribing to the podcast on your favorite platform. Leave us a quick rating and review. It goes a long way in helping produce more great episodes like this one. Now, for today, we have a special guest joining us all the way from London, England. My next guest is the founder and CEO of Shiageto Consulting, where he helps businesses set sharper strategies by providing innovative, emotionally intelligent facilitation, training, and speaking to improve IQ, EQ, and FQ. In addition to his role as Chief Effective Officer, he also provides his followers with a glimpse into his personal life on his blog, which you can find on Medium. Please welcome my next guest, Faris Aranki. Faris, thanks for being here today.
Hey, Vinny, thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to be on the show today, and Up to the Mic is a fantastic podcast, so glad to be here.
Well, I appreciate it. We are happy to have you on. I'm glad we were able to get this on the calendar for us. I want to dive into everything about your business, your background from consulting that you did previously before jumping into your own firm, and really the way that you kind of drive the business with this IQ, EQ, and FQ model. But before we jump into everything, like I start every episode, I like to get down to the person that the listeners are listening to. And so start off with just telling us a little bit about your background. Where you're from, what your life was like growing up, and kind of a little bit of how you grew into who you are right now. And then we'll dive into the business stuff.
Okay, it's like a therapy session, but I love it, Vinny. Let's go. So I'm talking to you today from London, England, and that's where I grew up. Born and raised in the UK. My parents are both from Palestine. They were came to the UK many years ago. Displaced by the war out there, but hey, gave us a great opportunity. I'm one of four kids. Grew up, and my school days are like anyone else's school days, but it was a great sort of learning curve, between school and university, I guess, is where I came to blossom first. I had the fantastic opportunity of spending a year abroad, and I went straight for something that was completely different to my lifestyle in the UK. I went and spent a year living in a little village in the mountains of Nepal, where I was teaching English and doing development work. And I guess that kind of created the first spark in me for doing something different and really focusing on working with people and getting the best out of them. So beyond that was my college days, my university days, and then after that I became a school teacher, Vinny. I guess inspired by my time abroad, I became an international school teacher. So I taught around the world. I taught my degree, which was maths and economics. And then sort of a bit later than other people, I leaped into the business world, and I joined an energy company, Vinny. So I learned all about the energy market and I got really attracted to the strategy side of things, solving complex problems in the energy sector. And from there, I joined a consulting firm and spent 12 years as a strategy consultant, solving complex problems for big organizations around the world. And 3.5 years ago, I had the courage to set up my own firm. So there's a real pod of history. Happy to dive into any part. But hey, like I say, we can talk about all aspects.
I love it. No, I think one thing that might be beneficial is for the listeners that I have, a lot of them come a little bit younger business background, just starting. As you talk about your university days, one of the main things that I see the listeners tend to struggle with when they leave me comments and questions, it's in relation to figuring out what they're striving to be, what their passion is, what it is that they're going to try and stake their claim in. You mentioned how you started off by going to be a school teacher and teaching in your specialty. I guess one, was the passion for mathematics and economics always there? And then two, what made you kind of go into the teaching realm and then eventually years later transition into the role of business? I guess maybe provide some clarity for how a listener might be able to make that determination for themselves.
Yeah, and it's hard to know what you should do and really have that clarity from a young age. I joke that I still don't really have that clarity. But look, I was greatly inspired by my dad in particular, who had multiple careers. And I guess when I got to university, my initial inroads is I did math and economics. I'd never studied economics before. I did math because I was good at it. So I went with one thing that I was good at and one that was a new adventure. And do you know what happened? I hated the math and I loved the economics. And I guess that's what happens sometimes. But for me, university was about discovering stuff. I got immersed in a whole wide range of stuff, both academic and non-academic, sports teams, social aspects. I actually ended up, Vinny, holding a variety of student body positions, and it culminated with being elected to be a student president for a year. So I was paid, to be a president after I finished my degree. Now that was fantastic, right? And I got involved in so many things. Didn't realize at the time that all these experiences would be so beneficial. But I was still learning, really. I still didn't know. And why did I go into being a teacher? It wasn't for any passion of teaching, really. The market for jobs was pretty poor when I left university. So I just I thought, do you know what? I've always wanted to go and live in Latin America. How can I make that happen, right? And I was like, I've got a degree. I know I can teach because I did that on my year out. Let's see if I can go around and sell myself to schools in Latin America. Will one of them take me? And lo and behold, I got an offer from a school that said, "Hey, come and teach your degree here." And that's how I became a teacher, right? It wasn't necessarily a burning ambition to be a teacher, but I loved it, right? And it was 5 years of teaching, because once you've done it once somewhere and you've got a good reference, you can go on somewhere else. But then I came to the realization that I had done that and it served its purpose. So I was then, what's next? And that's when I moved into the business world. So there you go, a bit of my history. I was just going to say, for your listeners, it's okay not to know, right? But go out and explore and try stuff and see how the feedback loops that you get.
That's great advice that I tend to hear frequently when I bring that question up to someone like yourself. It's that it's okay not to know immediately, especially while you're young. A lot of people get into a rush, myself included, in trying to figure everything out from the start, when it's okay to go through some different phases and figure things out along the way. One question that I have that's a little bit of a kind of a side note for myself.
Yeah.
So I work as a consultant as well here in the U.S. When I first started out my career, it was pre-pandemic. And so in person, a lot of times the travel would be leave Monday morning, go to wherever in the country that the client was, work for 3 to 4 days in their office, travel back on Thursday evening, and maybe work from home or work from your home office on Friday. The dynamic has shifted and changed. If you can't tell, I'm in my home office at my desk currently, and that's pretty much where I'm at every day. I hardly travel. Occasionally I get the chance to move around, but I'm curious, for someone like yourself that was in the world of consulting for so long prior to the pandemic, was the travel similar, or was the aspect similar for you when you were working on these big clients? And then what was, I guess, the draw for you to go into a life of travel? You mentioned how you wanted to go off on teaching and you wanted to go and try all these different things. But then with the actual consulting realm, you're doing something different every single week, it seems like, or every few weeks. Was that something you enjoyed? Was that something that maybe came as a struggle for you?
No, I absolutely enjoyed that, right? I'm the kind of person who loves variety, loves learning new stuff, loves doing stuff. So that's really been a big driver. If you kind of chart all the different things I've done in life, it's a lot of it is driven by that. So that was massively appealing about consulting. For other people, it's the quick acceleration, it's the quick learning, it's the the money, the status. But it did come at a toll, right? It came at a price. What you described to your listeners was exactly what I did for 12 years, all before the pandemic. It was the 5-4-3 model, we'd call it, right? You'd spend 5 days a week on a client, for a client. 4 days of that would be in person. 3 days would be away, 3 nights away from home. So for years, I would get on a plane on a Monday morning, travel around Europe, and not come back till a Thursday or Friday. And it's not great for some aspects of your life, like your personal life and those sort of things. And I guess I made that trade, but often you just forget, and when you're in it so long, you just assume that's what life is. And, I tell people it was really funny when I set up my own company, Vinny, and walked away from it. The first week I was like, what do I do with myself? It's a Tuesday. I'm at home. I haven't been at home on a Tuesday in over 12 years. Like, all my friends had forgotten about me. I rang some up and I said, "What are you guys doing tonight?" And he was like, "Why do you care? You're never here." And I'm like, "I am now." So it's about adapting, and it's funny how you can get so used to it and just accept it as the norm. And that's a worry in life when stuff becomes like that. But yeah, it is a different world now.
Well, speaking of the different world that it is, one of the things that they've started to do, because for those of you that aren't in the consulting world, the bill for the travel for all the consultants is typically footed by the client themselves. And so to save on costs, and because people can now realize that people can work remotely and still do a good job and get the job accomplished, they've started to, if they require someone in the office, they'll fly us out early on like a Tuesday morning. We'll have a full day in the office. We'll be in the office by 8:30 or 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. We'll work a full day. We'll stay one night on Tuesday. We'll be a full day in their office on Wednesday, and then take the last flight home on Wednesday night. So they only pay for one flight or two flights in one night, but they get 2 full days of work from us in their office. So they've started to game the system slightly.
Yeah, years of payback, Vinny. But um,
Well, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was just going to say nowadays. So I still travel nowadays. I run my own business, and I'll tell the listeners a bit more about my business in a minute. But I set myself rules when it comes to it. So forget what the client says, but I set myself rules. It's much more relaxed, and I always take an extra day if I've never been to that city or that place, at least to explore. So it's less rushing, but I do a different kind of consulting nowadays, so I can do that. But it's funny how much you can actually take pleasure from something that for years was just a function. Just get me there as quickly as possible.
Understood. Well, let's transition into that. I think it's a perfect time. Tell the listeners a little bit about your business, what you do, what you specialize in. And then
Yeah.
one question I'm specifically interested in is, after making such a huge jump to starting your own firm, how do you initially gain the clientele that you got right off the bat? I know it's a huge jump from going steady paycheck to starting my own company and diving in head first. We can go into that later. Maybe start with kind of an overview of what you
Yeah,
do
let's
and why
start
you
with an
do it.
overview of the company. So, my company, as you said, is called Shiageto Consulting, and Shiageto is the Japanese word for a sharpening stone because that's what we do for companies. We sharpen them, we make them more effective because we all get a little blunt from time to time. How do we do that? You mentioned the equation that we use and the pillars that we have, Vinny, which is all about um, if to be successful in life, you need to have a clear vision. You need to have a clear what are you aiming for? What's the problem you're trying to solve? Once you've got that, you need to bring the three elements: the right level of IQ. So, have you got the best ideas, the best solutions to tackle that problem? If not, we can help you with that. The next, have you got enough EQ? Have you got the ability to take others with you on the journey? Okay, because a great idea, and this is the world I used to come from, is just a great idea on a piece of paper. It's just a piece of paper. If you cannot sell it to people and cannot get them to see it, get inspired by it, you're not going to do anything. And I spent 12 years that developing great strategies that went nowhere because people didn't buy into them. And then the third part is you need FQ, focus quotient. Right? And many of your listeners might not have heard of focus quotient, but if you're not focused enough to deliver on your idea, again, it's going to fail. And that's a big problem I see in companies. Often on the strategic level, they're trying to do too much at the same time. So the biggest thing I can do to help them is strip away and say, what are the three priorities you should be working on? What is going to be the biggest bang to solve the problem that you've told me is the most pressing problem in your business or where you want to end up? So IQ, EQ, FQ, we help with all three pillars. And that's what my business is about today. So me and my team, we go into companies, we facilitate, we galvanize, we get people to really buy into ideas, make sure they're focused, make sure there's the right quality of ideas. So it's either facilitation or training. And that's why it's much more relaxed.
Is there a typical type of clientele or niche that you work in, or do you see this problem spread across a wide variety of organizations?
I see this problem in every organization. So that's the beauty. We work with large corporates. I can reel off a bunch of names: the likes of Amazon, the likes of Mars, the likes of Anglo American, Fevertree, Heineken. They're all clients. But we also work with a whole bunch of startups which have different challenges. But they're all people orientated. They're all hey, I'm not getting the best out of my team. This team isn't working well together. For some reason, we can't land this strategy. Yeah, these problems persist everywhere. So it's great for me and my business. It's great to help. And what I love about working with big and small companies is you can take an idea from one and try it in the other arena and say, look, it really works here. How about we try it here? We're constantly on the lookout for better ways of doing things and better ways of getting teams working better together.
Well, one thing I'm curious about is the actual conception of the idea for the consulting business. So, as
Yeah.
opposed to transitioning out of strategy like you were initially and just
Yeah.
doing something extremely similar and going into more strategy consulting, you kind of put your own twist on it. When did the idea first come to be, and then how did you actually make the leap into doing it?
Yeah, so I had a sort of growing sense that there was something there from the fact I told you I spent 12 years, and what I discovered during that, and Vinny, you're a consultant, so you put in a lot of hours to develop your work, right? And I'd go and present it in the final boardroom, and I was fascinated that 90% of the time they didn't do anything with it. You just presented a 100-page report saying you should do this. It's very clear, and they'd look at it and they go no, right? And they would do that not because it was a bad idea because you knew your research, your analysis was good. It was because they either didn't understand it, but they weren't in a safe environment to say, look, I don't understand this. Or there was politics in the boardroom, right? The person who sponsors it, didn't get on with the CFO or something. So it was never going to fly. Or they were just doing too many other things already. So they didn't even have the bandwidth, right? So I became fascinated by this and I became really intrigued because I'd invested a lot of my life in doing it to unpick these problems and realized I was very good at it. And I got to the point that I was so good at it, the company I was at would just send me in to clients I'd never worked on. And they'd say, Faris, can you just go and work your magic? You're just good with groups of people. And I was like, but I don't know anything about the topic. And they're like, just go and do it. And I realized that there's more and more. That was my true skill, that I could take a group of people who all had different views and get them all to buy into that one idea. And that's when I had the aha moment of, hey, maybe there's a business here. But you know what, Vinny? I didn't actually make the leap until I started working with a great career coach. And she really challenged me about what I wanted for the next step in my career. And she got me to really reflect on what elements of my job I liked and what I didn't. And then when I saw a black and white on a piece of paper, I was like, there's a job there that I should be doing. All right, let's build a company around it. And that's what inspired me to make the leap.
Is a career coach something that and obviously you had a good experience with it.
Yeah.
One, I'm assuming it's something you'd recommend to people. Would it be something you recommend to people early on or just starting out in their career as to something that can help them get the initial push in the right direction? Or is it something that is typically reserved for later down the line when you're trying to pivot from what you initially started in?
I think you're never too young or too early to start with a career coach, and it doesn't have to be a formal career coach. What does any coach do? They ask you the right questions and hold you accountable to answer them. So it could be a good mate, a good buddy, a good friend, but someone you trust who asks you those questions. The key is being held to answer them, because we all have the questions. Oh, what should I do next? Or should I do this? But then we we get distracted by something else and we never actually answer it, or we don't really challenge ourselves. So that's what a good coach does. It is invaluable because it is very hard to read your own label or really challenge yourself fully. As even if you're the greatest, and I always found it funny because this is what I do with companies. So to have somebody come and help me, I was like, well, surely I can do it myself, but you can't read your own label. Right. It could be a professional coach. It could just be a close friend, but somebody who does ask you those questions and hangs around to hear the answers is very valuable.
I like that. You can't read your own label. I think that's probably something I struggle with myself, that I feel like I can answer a lot of the questions for myself because I do it for other people, but have to bring it back to reality sometimes and have that second opinion, an outsider's opinion, to really level you sometimes to get to where you actually want to be.
Yeah, and that's a big part of EQ, right? Self-awareness, self-management. Sometimes saying, I can't be the hero of every story, right? I cannot it's just impossible. So, you know what? Let's surround myself by other heroes who will help me fill in the gaps.
Well, as we talk about, EQ, IQ, and FQ,
Yeah.
if a listener were to take what you just spoke on and try to
Yep.
transition it from applying to a large organization or a large or small organization and bring that to their personal life, what are
Yeah.
some ways you'd recommend maybe implementing those theories into just daily life?
Oh, I mean, I've got 101 suggestions for each pillar, but let's start with IQ, right? Do you have enough good quality ideas? How creative are you? Whatever your problem, whatever you're trying to achieve in life, right? IQ for me is, can you come up with 100 ways to do it, right? And then pick the best option. Okay, that's all that strategy is. Have a destination, work out all the ways you can get there, pick the best one based on your criteria or constraints. But you need to generate all those ideas, because too many people just come up with one idea and go, I'll do that. Right? So anything in your personal life, let's say it's I want to lose weight, right? Come up with all the ideas, and it could be anything from go to a gym, I'll hire a PT, but it could be something wacky, right? I'll walk everywhere from now on. I'll spend a whole or I'll buy a pogo stick and pogo, all right? Or I'll do the shopping for all my neighbors for a week, right? Because that will force me, right? How many ideas can you come up with? That's the IQ side, right? And most people tell me, hey, I'm not a creative person. They can't help. Creativity can be trained. I've got loads of techniques. I help people improve how they come up with ideas and stress test them. So number one, improve your IQ in your own personal life. Generate more ideas. Okay. Number two, EQ. How can you improve your EQ in your personal life? Right. Learn to listen more. Learn to flex your style. Right. Don't follow the golden rule in life, which is treat others how I want to be treated. Follow the platinum rule, which is treat others how they want to be treated. Right now, that the only way to achieve that is by talking to more people and finding out what they like, and then being able to flex your own stuff. So what do I mean by that? If you know the person opposite you likes you to start with small talk, even if you don't like small talk, start a conversation with small talk. It'll make them feel more at ease. Okay. If the person opposite you loves looking at spreadsheets to land an idea, and even if you hate it, walk into the room with lots of data. Okay. However you want to get someone on board, learn what their style they like and you switch to it. Don't expect them to switch to your style. And then in terms of FQ, can you limit your distractions? Right? And the biggest one is, can you be at any one point in time, whatever you're doing, say, what is the most important thing I should be doing right now? Okay. That, if you can prioritize stuff, that is the biggest thing, right? Forget about muting your phone and those kind of small distractions. Too many of us just work on stuff because it's in front of us, not because it's going to be the biggest impact in solving the biggest problem in our life. Often we actually put those off for other reasons, emotional reasons. We're afraid and stuff. But just having that clarity on, these are the top 3 things I should be working on today, or I should be achieving in this conversation, or I should be getting out of this email, is super important to making sure you've got high FQ.
That really drives the point home for me personally, because I think literally just yesterday, I'm someone who struggles with, I stay very busy, but I don't necessarily always stay very productive. I like to think I'm a very productive person, but at the core of it, I'm always on the move. I'm always doing this task and switching to this and trying to multitask. But I learned about a theory yesterday, very similar to what you just spoke on, and really interconnected. I think they made the most sense to me is that, I'm going to sit down today and I'm going to focus on the 3 or 4 most important things that are going to help me tomorrow. So I'm going to get those 3 or 4 things done. And then what I was listening about yesterday is dependent on your ways of working. So are you a morning person? Are you a night owl, etc.? I'm someone who's specifically a morning person. After 3 or 4 in the afternoon, my concentration and focus levels tend to go down pretty substantially. So that's when I save a lot of my administrative mindless task for. Whereas in the beginning of the day, that's where I do the core of what's going to make me think throughout the day. So as we record this podcast, it is currently 5:29 a.m. here in Texas where I'm located. And so
Yeah.
this is one of the most important things I'm doing today. I woke up, I prepared for it. After this, I've got 3 other things on my list that I'm going to try and get through before 9 a.m. when I have my first consulting meeting. And so at that point, it's my day's already started, but I've accomplished all of the hardest things I need to do today, with the exception of personally my exercise. My run will happen later today,
Yeah.
potentially after a quick nap. But the point I bring this up is to say that I can make the connection between what you're speaking to and the ability to prioritize what's most important to you, because that's what's going to get you to where you want to be in the long run. And so I think it's valuable for the listeners to really drive that point home on pick what's going to pick, as opposed to having a laundry list of items to go through. Pick 3 or 4 every day that this is what I have to get done, and these are the highest priority, and then run with those.
Totally, and I love that. And I'm honoured that I'm one of your top 4 things to do today, or this podcast is, Vinny. And B, you're bonkers getting up that early, but you're right. If you know yourself and you're a morning person, then play to your strengths. And I love that, right? And I always say to people, think bigger, right? I'll tell you a great story about a little company here in the UK who they are a energy company. They sell energy, and they looked at the call center. So every energy company has a call center. So if you have a problem, you ring in the call center, you speak to an agent, say, look, my electricity is not working or my bill's too high. And they looked at this and they said, look, typically the ratios in the industry of how many people you have on the phone to how many customers is 1 to 500. Okay, if you have 500 customers, you get one agent so they can ring in. And they said, okay, so we can do that, or we can think bigger. How about we eliminate all those calls? So we don't have those 500 people calling in. Then we need less agents, right? So they looked at the agent role as super important. So instead of just paying minimum wage and getting somebody in to answer the phones and deal with customer complaints, which is like $20,000 salary, they hired someone at $200,000 salary who was a computer programmer. And when he received his first phone call and he heard the complaint, what did he do? He went in and changed the code in the system so that complaint never happened again. Right? And you know what? The calls went down and down. So they started making more and more of a profit because they looked at the problem bigger. And that's where I say the IQ comes in. Generate more ideas, because it's very easy to just look around you and say, what are everyone else doing? I'll copy that. But they stepped back and they went, no, we're gonna tackle this completely different. Right? And they do that with everything now. And they run one of the leanest operations. So they have one agent to 10,000 customers, not 1 to 500 like their competitors, because they just looked at the problem differently. Right? So I always say, go bigger and then really focus and deliver on it. That's why you need the IQ, the FQ, and the EQ. Is they had to convince their bosses this was the right thing to do because it sounded wacky, right? Why should we pay 10 times the salary when we don't need to?
That's super helpful. I think I am personally world's worst about coming up with some, whether it be a business venture or blog idea or new book I want to read, and not really thinking through it prior to jumping into it. I get the one idea and I go for it. I fail fast, which is a good thing, but I also fail frequently because I'm going in and I'm starting something and then I realize, no, this isn't really what I thought it was, or this isn't what I was really expecting it to be. And then I stop and I jump and I try something else. There's a few constants in my life: running, podcasting, my actual day job. Those things I've been able to stick with wholeheartedly, and they really are the driving force behind me. But there's other ventures that I like to pursue that, guitar is a good example. So I'm not extremely musically inclined. I picked up the guitar. I got obsessed for, 4 or 5 months, and then I just kind of lost interest after a while. So I got as good as I needed to be to play a few songs, and then I just kind of like didn't pursue it any further, or started a new book, realized I didn't like it that much, and just dropped it right then and there, as opposed to finishing it and seeing what it might have came to be in the later chapters. So I think that speaks slightly to your point of figure it all out, or not necessarily figure it all out, but give yourself options from the beginning. That way you have more of a clear understanding when you jump into it, and you're less surprised down the road. Now, there could still be circumstances that come up. I'm not saying there wouldn't, but
Yeah.
I think that kind of draws a good connection there between figuring it out at the beginning, or trying to as best you can, and then saving yourself effort, probably more effort down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And if you've got all those ideas at the beginning, if something does go wrong down the line, you've still got 99 other ideas you can substitute it with. Whereas if you've only picked the first one, then you get more stressed and you're like, what do I do now?
Exactly. Well, okay, one thing that I would do, I kind of want to transition a little bit here. You
Yeah.
spoke earlier about how great you were in a room with clients, and how a lot of
Yeah.
times your, employer would tell you, hey, will you please go lead this meeting because of the fact that you had that connection with your client. Maybe speak a little bit about to our listeners that might not be the best at effective communication or public
Yeah.
speaking in general. What are some ways to grow in that skill? What are some ways that you saw yourself grow in that skill? Was it something that always came natural to you? Did you have to
Yeah.
evolve into who that,
No, no.
role you
I mean,
played?
I had to evolve. My dad always says it comes natural because he was a public speaker. He was a broadcaster on the radio. So he was like, "Oh, you take after me, son." But no, I had to learn those skills. And actually, this is where I'm immensely grateful for my 5 years in the classroom, because what is teaching, if you break it down, it is selling ideas to a range of different people who all sat in the same room, right? So I always talk about, I taught two subjects, right? Economics, which was great because it was an elective. So all the kids who picked it had chosen it and wanted to be in the classroom, and they were generally bought into it and smart and thing. But math was the opposite. Every kid out there has to learn math, right? And some love it, some hate it, some find it easy, some find it difficult, but you have to be able to get through to all of them. So 5 years of standing in front of 11-year-olds who didn't get it, I had to learn how to flex, twist, watch the reaction when I said something. Did they get it? Did they not get it? So I became really good at reading the room, as I call it. Like, is what I'm saying going in? And if not, changing. Because there's no point just keep saying the same thing over and over and over again if the kid in front of you hasn't got it. So I'd have to find a different way to say it, and then a different way and a different way. And that skill to read and then flex and keep trying and in the same conversation is basically what I do today. Why I was so good, why I could be sent into any room with people I've never met before. Because I'd try something, which was my natural style, see if it resonated. If not, I'd quickly switch. Right? So when you say, can people develop the skills? Yeah, of course you can, right? Try it with your friends. Try having exactly the same conversation in a different way and see the reaction. When I first started my company, I every week would create a 1-minute video where I'd explain what the company did in a completely different way from the video the week before. And I'd test it on my mum and dad to see which one they really understood, because they didn't really understand the concept of the business. I was like, right. And it also, the great thing is it gave me each week a new way to explain it. One week I'd explain it like I'm a PT. One week I'd explain it I'm like a doctor, right? I'd use different metaphors, different analogies. So yeah, all of us can practice how we communicate in different ways, particularly with those that we're closest with, because they'll give us the most honest feedback.
Well, I'm curious. You say those closest to you will give you the most honest feedback, and sometimes I feel like it would be the opposite. I almost feel like those closest to you would be the ones that would want to spare your feelings if they had some tough criticism for you. But
Well, you obviously you don't know my sister, but no, I'll tell you a story. Vinny. The first time, have you ever been a best man for a wedding or similar? Had to give a big speech.
yes,
The first time I was a best man was for my brother, actually, and I wrote this speech that I thought was hilarious. Okay, and my sister said, "Come on, tell it to me." And I was like, "No, it's great. You'll hear it on the day." But she finally wore me down, so I said it to her, in a dress rehearsal. We got to the end, and she went, "That's not funny. That's not funny. You think that's funny? That was terrible. That was the." And I went, "Really?" And I went away. I was quite hurt, but when I reflected on it, it was like, "Oh, she's probably right. That was an in joke. I didn't really explain that one." And so then I changed it, and then I went to test it on my parents, and my dad was like, "I don't get it. I don't get it." And I realized it was like aimed at younger people, so it was really valuable to get the feedback from the people who were closest to me, because they didn't. Yeah, while they cared about my feelings, they were also comfortable enough to say, "I don't get it." Right? Or you're not funny, Faris. From that, I learned a valuable experience, right? Share more, test more. And sometimes it's with strangers and sometimes it's with those who are closest, but just get that feedback loop and learn that skill yourself.
that's fair. I see the point there, and it makes a lot of sense. I think
Yeah.
any criticism is good criticism if you're able to receive it in the right way. And so I'm someone who tries not to get my feelings hurt when I ask people for criticism, or if they just give it themselves. Take everything with a grain of salt, as they like to say, and really
Yeah.
use it to be as the best person you can be.
Yeah. I mean, to be successful in life, you have to be able to accept feedback. So early on in your life, find a way to generate more feedback. It's a bit like they say everyone in their life should learn how to sell something, because selling is about a lot of rejections, a lot of feedback. But one of the best experiences for me, even though it was painful at the time, is if I go back to those university days, Vinny, I ended up being a student president that I mentioned. Now, to get the position of president, I had to go on the election trail, right? So I had to go, at one point, I knocked on over 500 people's doors, students, and asked them if they'd vote for me. And 500 people invited me in for a coffee and told me to my face what they thought of me. And many of them I didn't even know. And I'd say not all of it was pleasant, but I had to sit there over a cup of coffee while they told me, I think you're an arrogant, I don't like your face, I don't like, and whether it was justified or not, I got very used to accepting feedback, live feedback, which felt terrible at the time, but is so powerful because life is about adapting and evolving, and you can only do that by getting feedback. So actually, I now actively seek feedback, and I love it.
There you go. I think for some of our younger listeners out there who might still be involved in, or even some that are in university or college days, if you're an athlete, I think growing up, I played sports. And one of the things that they commonly preached to us was be coachable. Don't be someone that is so quick to dismiss the feedback provided by your coach that you're just going to ruin the rest of your day or the rest of your practice or the rest of your game because you couldn't take the feedback that is probably going to help you in the long run if you think about it. And so being coachable is something that you can apply to every aspect of your life. Don't necessarily just be coachable if you're an athlete. Be coachable in your work, in your daily job. Be coachable in your relationship when your partner gives you feedback, when they tell you they don't like something, when you tell them they don't like something and you get their response to it. People give you feedback in a lot of different ways, not solely in the way that they speak to you or the words that they give you, but a lot of times in their body language, in the way they react to things that you say. So take feedback as a whole and use it to, propel yourself, change things, adapt things, work on getting better every single day because of, if you don't, a lot of times being stagnant or being complacent is one of the things that, like you spoke to earlier, for some people, maybe it's great. For others, it could be the worst thing in the world. And I think both you and I share the same sentiment of the sense that I need something different every few weeks. So that's why my job is such a good fit for me because every 4 to 8 weeks, my job is changing. I've got multiple clients that I'm working on simultaneously. It's not the same thing I sit down and look at every day. So I kind of went off on a long divergent way there of saying that I agree with what you say about being able to receive feedback, but I also urge the listeners to go in and look for feedback in ways that you might not typically. It's not always in what people tell you when you ask for it. It's the way that they react to things when you say something.
Yeah. And yeah, that's spot on, right? And that's also about reading the room. Not everyone is particularly in some cultures, is direct and honest to your face. Other cultures, they're very honest. And actually, in certain cultures, the biggest feedback is them ignoring you or not replying to your email. That is feedback as well, right? Obviously, don't jump to conclusions something might have happened to them, but actually, there are lots of things to be drawn from not hearing from somebody as much as hearing from somebody.
Definitely. Well, I want to ask one or two more questions about
Yeah.
the business itself, and then maybe we can close out with just some thoughts of your own.
Yeah.
But I am curious. I want to jump back to
Yeah.
the early days of the business.
Mm.
What was it like getting those initial clients? Because as someone who, I hear from people all the time about, I'm thinking about starting my own venture, branching out from what I currently do. It's a big step for people. And
Yeah.
so obviously you had an established career. Were you
Yeah.
able to kind of step into a business that you had already built on the side, or was it just kind of jumping into it fresh and saying, "Here I am, let's go get clients"? And then how'd you approach that?
Yeah, it was completely fresh. So it was close one chapter of my life, start the next. And I'm a strategist, so I time boxed it. This is the F focus part. I was like, right, you've got a month to think through your business plan, build all the components you need, but then you've got to get out in the street and start knocking on doors. But that's figuratively, not literally. And that's how you get business. Right? Unless you're incredibly lucky, or and somebody just turns up and gives you work. You have to, if you're running your own business, you have to put yourself out there. And that can mean different things to different people. So my early days, I was testing different ways of getting myself out there. I just sent cold emails. I would just ring people up. I would go to conferences and try and meet more people. I would go for paid advertising. I would just do blogs and vlogs and stuff like that until I found the combination that worked for me. Okay, it took some time, and even now I'm still refining that. But what I say, what works for you is, because you have to do this a lot, it cannot be something that you look at and go, oh, I can't be bothered, or it takes your energy. It's got to be stuff you get excited by and you would do anyway, because you're going to, of every 100 doors you knock on, 90 are going to be thanks, but no thanks. And they might be polite, but there's a lot of rejection along the way. So doing something that A, takes you energy and then robs you of even more energy when you get a no is going to be really tough. So for me, what the combination was is networking my own network. So because the great thing about 20 years of being in industry is I know a lot of people because I'm a networker. So I walked away and I had 10,000 connections on LinkedIn, okay, which is now about 15,000. So what I do every day is I re-network that. I send 25 to 30 voice notes to my connections on LinkedIn, saying, hey, it's been a while. How about we grab a coffee or something to that effect? And it's really powerful. It really works, right? Of those, if I send 25 a day, 20 people respond to me. Of those 20, I'll generate 15 coffees. If I have 10 coffees, I find a piece of work, a new client. But I just keep that engine going, and I supplement it with blogs and podcasts and things, because that's a great way of staying connected with my clients. But it is that, right? But I love that. I love connecting with people. I do that every day. And if I stopped, then my business would fall over eventually. But for this, where I am now, that's what the engine of growth.
I like that a lot. Well, I guess let me kind of slow down a little bit and try and
Yeah.
bring this episode full circle, because we've started off by giving the listeners a little bit of a view into you as a person and what your upbringing was like. And then we transition into the bulk of what it is that drives you these days and what you have done to get to where you are currently. But I want to ask you, what's next? What are
Yeah.
the goals for you? What is the goal for next year? What are the goals for the next 5 or 10 years? Whatever it is that you're striving for, however far it is you look into the future, what is it for you? And maybe that'll resonate with someone listening to this.
Yeah. So, I started this company 3.5 years ago. I had a terrible year with COVID. We had next to no work, but since then it's taken off. It's doubled every year in size. We have a team now. We have clients, about coming up to 30 clients around the world. So it's been even more successful than I want. So a lot of people say to me, are you going to continue that growth? Right? That is not actually my goal. My goal was always about fun and learning, right? I set this up as a vehicle for myself. Yeah, I wanted to be comfortable in doing that and earn enough money, but it was about continue to learn. So that is my ambition, right? Now, I don't see this being a major corporate, but things change. But, I can see it being a team of 20, 30 people around the world doing what we do, helping businesses, and continue to have fun and learn. So that is my ambition, certainly for the next sort of 5 years, because it's allowed me to do loads of other things, Vinny. I'm helping write a book. I do public speaking events. I get invited in, to inspire people. I've even ended up on a advertising campaign here in the UK across billboards. So stuff I never even dreamed of, all through this vehicle. So as long as I continue to have those experiences, that's really my goals for the next 5 years. And yeah, who knows? Maybe it will grow into something massive, but it's about enjoying the journey along the way.
Absolutely. I appreciate that so much. And I think a lot of times people will get caught up in not necessarily what they're doing day to day and enjoying, I think it's a common phrase here, but enjoying the process, enjoying the
Mm.
journey. And they get so caught up on the end goal that they don't even make it all the way there because they don't find comfort or find joy in the daily grind of it, I guess, to actually make it to that end goal. And so I appreciate the sentiment there that you're going to go through it and approach it every day with what you've always thought. And you want to have that fun, you want to have that engaging atmosphere. You want to live a comfortable life, but you want to do so in something that motivates you and inspires you every day. I think that's a good sentiment to share with the listeners.
Spot on.
Well, Faris, I appreciate it so much. Where can people find out more about you and your work? If after listening to the podcast they want to reach out, I'll tag all of your links to the
Yeah.
blog, to your LinkedIn, etc.,
Yeah.
in the show comments, show description. But give us a quick shout out as to where people can go if they want to learn more about you.
Yeah. Come and visit the website, shiageto.com. or come and find me on LinkedIn. That's where I spend a disproportionate amount of my time. But look for Faris Aranki, and we'll carry on the conversation. I will be over in the US later this year, so maybe we can even meet in person. But yeah, connect with me virtually, and it all starts with a conversation, Vinny.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. As always, if you want to find out more about Faris and I's conversation, go take a look at the feature story on our host website, www.vinnyhale.com. Don't forget to follow him on Instagram at Vinny_Hale07. I will see you in the next one. Thanks, everyone.
Let's go. Yo. I'm like an addict, do I gotta have it. I ain't even playing, got a really bad habit. If it moves, gotta grab it. Fuse like a magnet, lose, won't have it till I'm doomed in a